they reliably deliver powerful new therapies to patients. Learn more at amgen.com.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Carvana. Carvana has made it easy to sell your car. Just enter your license plate or VIN, answer a few questions, and they'll give you a real offer in seconds. And it's good for up to 7 days. Visit Carvana.com to get an instant offer today.
Okay, Nate and Nagar, you're working together on research that looks at health disparities and how they may be linked to what's going on in a person's brain. So Nagar, let's start with you, since you have a background in PTSD, and the effect of racial discrimination on a person can be traumatic. Have you seen differences in the brains of PTSD patients versus patients who've experienced the trauma of racial discrimination?
Yes. One thing that we've been able to see historically is that people who have more of these fear-related symptoms of PTSD, meaning they may be more vigilant or have a lot more hyperarousal, their body's kind of in a constant fight or flight state, they have lesser activation in an area of the brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This is an area of the brain that really puts the brakes on the amygdala, which is the main center for threat detection. And so this is something that we've historically thought of as like the problem with PTSD. It's the ventromedial prefrontal cortex not putting the brakes on the amygdala when people are in a safe situation.
Okay.
But what we are able to see with racial discrimination and people who've experienced more of it is kind of an opposite effect. They show an increased activation in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, that area of the brain that's involved with regulating emotions and regulating the amygdala. And we think that this is related to the fact that they're constantly regulating their emotions in the context of racist stressors.
And in some contexts, regulating your emotions is considered a good thing.
Most definitely.
But maybe not always, not here?
Well, no, it's pretty adaptive in the short term. Let's say like your boss is saying something that was, a microaggression, offensive to you. You're turning that area on in the brain so that you can get through the situation without saying something that might offend them or, mess up your job situation. But when you have to deal with this on an ongoing basis constantly, or if you're going back and thinking about the situation over and over again and feeling sort of disturbed by it, it's like that area stays on a lot more than our bodies are designed to really deal with without it breaking down. And it's this overactivation over a prolonged period of time that we think could be contributing to this erosion or structural degradation, in particularly those regulatory areas of the brain.
Just to sort of expand a little bit more onto that, there's no such thing as a free lunch when it comes to the brain. Energy has to come from somewhere. And what we think ends up happening is, energy that's reserved for other processes then gets taken away. And we have this process where some people have called it weathering, where aspects of the brain or the body start to break down so you can get the energy to keep regulating. And over time, that might contribute to other downstream health problems like cardiovascular disease or diabetes, which is research that Nagar has done, really showcasing that the sort of constant exposure to discrimination, constant exposure to these inequities seems to be related to the development of these other downstream problems.
Since you mentioned Nagar's research, Nagar, I'd be interested if you could talk about how do you get from these changes you see in the brain, everything changes in the brain, how do you get from that to these diseases that we don't necessarily think of as being directly related to our brains?
Sure. So, there are myriad diseases that, I think racial trauma and racial discrimination, racism has been linked to. And so I think there are many paths. I think one way is through the fact that, as Nate was saying, this increased effort expenditure with self-regulation. And when our brains are sort of bathed in stress hormones for a long period of time, there is going to be some structural degradation. And one way we've been thinking about this is that if there's a greater erosion in regulatory areas of the brain, then we're going to be a lot more likely to choose or reflexively move towards coping behaviors that aren't really health oriented. So we might be more likely to pick up, a piece of candy when we're feeling really upset, or we, may grab a drink. These are things that we do to regulate our emotions, and when they're reflexive like this, and it happens for a longer period of time, then they're going to become more vulnerable to different types of problems down the line, whether they be metabolic problems or something like diabetes or cardiovascular problems. But it also increases risk for brain health problems like Alzheimer's disease, which we know is twice as prevalent in black people as compared to white.
Nate, I'm curious about whether this sort of structural inequities or institutional inequities, are they producing the same kinds of brain changes or different kinds?
Some of the results that we see are a little bit different from Nagar's, and that we'll see sort of lowered volume, lower integrity of different brain regions involved in emotional regulation. Whereas in some of the functional data we see in individuals that are older, we might see sort of greater activity, suggesting better ability to regulate themselves. And if we look sort of at young kids or young adults, we see different strengths of the effects in terms of structural inequities. We see smaller effects, but then as they get older, in some of our research, we actually see effects that are a lot larger.
Nate, if I can just follow that a little bit, I'm curious whether you've seen differences among races. Are there different ways that it plays out?
Yeah, we have done work looking at recent trauma survivors who are either white or black or Hispanic, and really see that these sort of brain connections or connections among different brain regions that are associated with PTSD, those associations are actually different between different racial ethnic groups, and that seems to be driven by the structural inequity between these groups, whether that be in terms of income or neighborhood disadvantage. And so, in actuality, these sort of long-term impacts of inequities affect just how well we're able to use brain imaging data to predict who's going to go on to develop PTSD.
Nagar, I'm curious, how has your research been received? What sort of reactions have you gotten to it?
I'm glad you asked that question. It has changed over time. So many years ago when I was just starting out, my research as a graduate student, it was not a thing that was really tolerated. And, in the scientific community, in the PTSD community, it was incredibly difficult to get my results published, and many things got kicked down the road, and the focus was taken away from race and more on PTSD because people didn't want to hear it. And I think that when it comes to racism research, it's often held to a different standard than trauma research. I've been giving trauma inventories to people for, like decades, and those inventories that ask people about, instances of sexual assault, physical assaults, or being in a car accident, those kinds of things. Those questionnaires were never, they were never criticized for what they were. No one asked for police reports, in my articles. But somehow, with racial discrimination or racism more generally, there is a different standard that we're held to. Like, how do you know that people really experience racism?
Do you think, by the way, putting data, fMRI images, things like this behind these sort of abstract concepts, do you think that's going to change the way people see what racism is and what it does?
It's a tightrope to walk, isn't it? Like, on the one hand, having the brain data makes it almost undeniable. You can visually see the impacts on kids, adults, and older individuals, this cumulative stress of racism and its toll on the brain. On the other hand, there's always a concern about biological essentialism. We're talking about racism, this sort of desire for some people to, see race in the brain. And I think it's important to realize that we're still talking about a social construction. It's not race in terms of skin color, it's the cumulative and disproportionate impact of many different types of stressors with rich, complex, and dynamic histories and social constructions that impact the brain.
I think when it comes to marginalized people, not necessarily. Many times the messages that I'm discussing with marginalized communities is like, well, yeah, we knew that. Like, that makes sense, and it's a no-brainer. But many times in the medical community, racism hasn't been recognized as the kind of insidiously damaging stressor that it is. And the hope is that this kind of brain research can lend a kind of legitimacy to racism as a potent social stressor that has a very clear and pronounced effect on the brain.
Nate, when you look at structures and institutions, are there changes you see that you consider hopeful?
I remain hopeful about the ever-changing nature of society and the structures of government. From my own perspective, we've seen a lot more interest in terms of different judicial activist groups and trying to change the actual legal way in which people approach racism. That we've also had just more conversations among places of power, places like the conversations we're having now, where we're just being willing to acknowledge the fact that these disparities and disparities exist, and even just think about how we're going to go about changing them.
Well, Nate and Nagar, thank you so much for talking today. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, likewise. Thank you for inviting us.
This episode was produced by Rachel Carlson and edited by managing producer Rebecca Ramirez. Rachel and Rebecca checked the facts. Maggie Luthar was the audio engineer. Beth Donovan is our senior director, and Colin Campbell is our senior vice president of programming. I'm John Hamilton. Thanks as always for listening to Shortwave from NPR.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from Easy Cater, committed to helping companies, from nonprofits to the Fortune 500, find food for meetings and company events with online ordering and 24/7 live support. Learn more at easycater.com.
The following message comes from NPR sponsor Satva. Founder and CEO Ron Rudson is proud that each Satva mattress is made to order.
Your mattress has a birth date after you order it. Nothing sits in muggy warehouses. Nothing sits in muggy basements of stores. When you order it, you're getting your product made fresh for you, and people love that.
To learn more, go to swtva.com/NPR.
How does AI even work? Where does creativity come from? What's the secret to living longer? TED Radio Hour explores the biggest questions with some of the world's greatest thinkers. They will surprise, challenge, and even change you. Listen to NPR's TED Radio Hour wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Lisa. When you buy a Lisa mattress, you're not the only one getting a better night's rest. Lisa donates thousands of mattresses each year to shelters and those in need. Learn more about Lisa at leesa.com.
This is Planet Money from NPR.
So, economists have big ideas, right? Ideas that they think would improve the economy, improve efficiency, improve our lives. And sometimes their ideas are a little out there, but they are convinced that they would improve the world if only people would hear them out. So today, we hear them out. Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm Sarah Gonzalez. We have 3 big ideas from economists and an engineer for your consideration. The ideas are: we ban left turns on the road. No one can make left turns anymore. We give people basically Social Security, but not just at the end of their life, at birth, for them to use the minute they become adults. And we no longer vote for individual candidates. What?
This message comes from NPR sponsor Teladoc Health. There are lots of reasons for wanting to be healthy. Family, work, living a fuller life. Teladoc Health understands. Whether you have diabetes, high blood pressure, or just need to manage your weight, Teladoc Health can help. Visit teladochealth.com/what'syourwhy for more information. That's TELADOC health/what'syourwhy.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Lisa. When you buy a Lisa mattress, you're not the only one getting a better night's rest. Lisa donates thousands of mattresses each year to shelters and those in need. Learn more about Lisa at leesa.com. Okay, so we have 3 big ideas for you. The first is from a civil engineer, Vikash Gaya, who almost went into soil engineering until he found traffic engineering. But yeah, no, traffic's better. I agree.
Yeah, way better.
Yeah. And Prakash has had a few hot traffic takes. His first one was actually that we should ban one-way streets. And now we're on to, you have a new big idea for what would make, I don't know, the world better, the country better? Downtowns, okay.
My big idea is at intersections we should get rid of left turns.
Ban left turns.
Ban left turns.
Pretty hot take there. He wants to ban making left turns in every downtown in America. And now, obviously, there's at least one big benefit to left turns. Sometimes there are things on your left that you want to get to, and you get to turn left. It is the most direct path to your destination, the most efficient path. Seems like we should allow that. But okay, we're going to hear Vikash.
Yeah, so the problem with left turns is you have to cross oncoming traffic. So if I'm at an intersection and I want to make a left turn, there are vehicles coming towards me, and I need to turn in front of their path.
Which is risky because you just have to wait until there's that little gap in traffic. And if a driver misjudges the gap,
it can be very catastrophic.
Yeah, about 40% of car crashes in the US occur at intersections, and most of them involve left turns. Yeah, why do we allow these turns?
I agree. So
can I say I just never take the gamble? I'm just gonna wait.
You're a safe driver, and kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you. Why don't we just say when you're making a left turn, no one else can drive around you. Like oncoming traffic, they get a red light, and I get a safe green light. Why isn't that the solution instead of just banning left turns completely?
Yeah, and we do that. So you'll see the green arrow sometimes, right? The left arrow.
The ridiculously short green arrow?
Ridiculous. So the reason it's ridiculously short is you're stopping all other traffic from moving. So you're serving basically fewer people. And the reason that the green arrows are so short in duration is because you don't want to waste any of that time, right?
Yeah, don't let me be your urban planner. Apparently letting left turners turn safely on a just for them green arrow is very, very inefficient. Because basically none of the other drivers on the road can move when you have a safe left turn signal. They suffer for your safe turn. It's inefficient. But if you think about it, the regular, less safe turn into oncoming traffic green light is also not very efficient. Because if you're stuck behind me, you're waiting, buddy. I'm not going.
And that's it. That is it.
Yeah, people just wait for that little gap in traffic, right? Which sometimes doesn't even come. Traffic starts piling up, it's blocking other lanes, and now no one is moving. But if you cannot make a left turn where you need to make a left turn because Vikash banned them, how do you get to somewhere on your left?
Yeah, I can make 3 rights. I can pass the intersection, make 3 rights, and that essentially accomplishes a left-hand turn.
2, 3 rights, yeah. Yeah, kind of make a big circle. So you're driving more. You're driving longer distances, which would take longer, right? You would think that is more of a waste of time. But Vikash was like, I don't know, maybe. Actually, I think it'll be more efficient. So he decided to test it out. He created a sort of hypothetical downtown, an entire traffic network simulator with a bunch of intersections to measure the impact of banning left turns, how much longer everyone's trips would be if there were no more left turns allowed.
We said, okay, well, what if we ban left turns at this intersection? Okay, what if we did it at this one? All combinations.
There were 65,000 combinations in all. And what Vikash found was that even though some people would have to travel longer distances, not everyone would have to do that, only the people who wanted to make left turns. So on average, all of the people driving on the road would only drive 1 extra block. But, and here's the counterintuitive part, the time it takes everyone to complete their trip, so their trip completion rate, would on average still be shorter. Because there would be less waiting at intersections for all of the Sarahs of the road to make their left turn. So you're driving more. You're driving more, but you're still getting there faster.
I'm putting more miles on my car, but I'm getting there faster.
Interesting. So, okay, so then I guess in this case, driving in circles it's like actually is more efficient, or it can be more efficient.
In this case it is, yeah.
And Vakash is not the only one who has arrived at this no left turns idea. UPS drivers kind of famously avoid left turns when they are on their delivery routes, and the thinking is similar. Making left turns leads to more accidents and wastes time. And Vakash says his big idea wouldn't require downtowns to like build new roads or tear down buildings to add roundabouts. It would be like paint or new traffic signs that said something like no left turns during these hours. So simple.
My goal is to get a city that is interested in doing this and to try to work with them to make this happen. I want people to hear this idea and give it a shot, honestly.
Alright, cities, find him. Maybe this will save lives and minutes for your residents. Okay, next up, we have economist Derek Hamilton, who got into econ for one very specific reason.
I majored in economics in undergrad with a desire not to be poor. There's nothing romantic about being poor.
Derek thought an econ degree would be a feeder to like law school or business school where he could really make money, right? But then he fell in love with econ.
I'm a scholar, that is my identity, and you can actually make a pretty good living being a professor of economics. I learned that as well.
Go Derek. Derek is the founding director of the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy at the New School. So you have a big idea for how to help close the racial wealth gap. And maybe it's not originally your big idea, but you're like, is it originally your idea? Okay, there you go. I'm so sorry. All right, hear him out.
Baby bonds.
Baby bonds. Great name. Okay, what is a baby bond?
A baby bond is technically not a bond. A baby bond is a trust account set up at birth.
Oh, like real wealthy people.
Yes.
Like you have a trust.
Yes. It recognizes that wealthy people set up a trust so that their children and offsprings will have wealth-promoting life.
So wait, so everyone does a trust fund, baby, in your world?
Yes.
Okay.
We democratize trust funds.
Here's how baby bonds would work. A baby is born anywhere in the U.S. and at birth, that baby and every baby gets X amount of dollars. Let's say $1,000 just for being born. All babies, wealthy, poor, white, not white.
So everyone has a birthright to something, but over time, based on your family's economic circumstance, you will get more, less, or none added to the account.
So if you are born into a family that is wealth poor, as Derek says, you might get an additional $2,000 added to your account every single year until you turn 18. If your family is like medium wealthy, maybe you just get $500 more every year. If you're Bill Gates' kids, you don't get anything more than the initial $1,000 you got for being born. You don't get to cash in until you are at least 18 years old, and you can only use the money to help you build wealth, like assets. Meaning like you can use the money to buy a house.
Right. What is often the difference between a renter and a homeowner? A down payment.
Down payment.
There it is.
Welcome to McDonald's. Will you use the mobile app today?
Yeah, I got my mobile app.
And what is your card?
2347.
Alright, what's going on for today, huh?
I'll take a sausage McMuffin with egg, just the sandwich.
Okay.
And I got a coupon for a free hash brown.
Anything else?
That's all.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thanks.
I am cool. Would you like the mobile app?
Thank you. Good day.
Okay, I got this too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Morning.
Morning.
You have
Thank
a good
you.
day. Thank you.
Okay. I was fixing some vehicles in Oxford. Rain or shine. Eventually we'll have a garage out here. And work will be easier. Right now I'm trying to warm up, adjust my glasses, take a little break. Soaking wet. This jacket is kind of garbage. It's not waterproof. I'm just soaked. It is supposedly 50 degrees, raining. So cold rain just sticks to you. And now I gotta check out a bus in Middletown and then go to the office, do office things. If you can see, they got they're doing some work on our Oxford hub in front of us. All this is going to be dug up and our new building will sit on it. I'll find something to listen to.
Baby bonds and compound interest. Derek says that a child born into a wealth-poor family could have like $50,000 or more by their 18th birthday, and they could use that money toward, yes, a down payment on a house, or to help pay for their college tuition, to start a business, or they could just keep the money in an interest-bearing account and like let the money pass over to their Social Security. Those are the four options for how this money could be spent under Derek's vision. The goal of these baby bonds would be to make sure that all poor kids, including white kids, have access to wealth. And Derek says doing this would actually shrink the disparity in wealth between white people and non-white people.
It's absolutely true that the wealth of a white high school graduate is higher than that of black families where they had graduated from college. That's absolutely true, on average.
And Derek says it is inaccurate to assume that black people can study or work their way out of the racial wealth gap. The gap between black and white wealth generally does not get smaller as black people move up in education. Throughout American history, the income gap between black and white people has narrowed, the education gap continues to close, but not the wealth gap. And Derek says it is not like white people built wealth or assets because they all just happen to make great personal decisions in life.
A white asset-based middle class did not simply emerge. There were government policies that generated wealth on a mass scale for white people.
Yeah, certain government policies basically gave white people assets, like gave farmers free land, except black farmers initially, or gave veterans money for college tuition, but somehow black veterans often got left out. For Derek, baby bonds would be another one of those kind of government-funded asset promoting programs. But the idea this time would be to not leave certain groups behind and like level the playing field. And there's a study that suggests baby bonds could actually do that. This other economist named Naomi Zodi found that in 2015, white young adults were 1,500% wealthier than black young adults. Now, if they all had received baby bonds, the white young adults would still be wealthier, but just 40% wealthier now. And a few places have enacted a version of baby bonds already. Washington, D.C., Connecticut. Connecticut has baby bonds for all of the lowest income kids. If baby bonds were done on a federal level, it would cost a decent amount of money every year.
Baby bonds would cost roughly $100 billion, which is about 2% of federal expenditures, by the way.
Yeah, $100 billion sounds like a lot. But Derek says there are other asset promoting tax programs that cost way more money. He's talking about like tax breaks for home ownership or college tuition. A group called Prosperity Now estimates that those kinds of tax breaks cost over $600 billion a year, and those help people with assets already, mostly wealthy white households, they found. And Derek's like, let's redirect some of that money to fund baby bonds. He does get pushback to his big idea. Some economists don't like these kinds of grants. They say, let's just boost up the existing social system. Others say we need to invest more in things like early childhood education, or that we should do reparations.
The answer to the question of what about something else instead of baby bonds often is yes, we need all of that. There is no silver.
Like that too. I'm not saying that instead of everything else.
But in essence, wealth begets more wealth. So if you ever want to redress wealth, a necessary ingredient is always capital itself.
Hey, Beth.
Hey, what you doing?
I'm driving to MTS in a little bit.
Oh, do you want to call me back?
No, I got you on speakerphone in my car.
I was gonna ask you about the MLK stops and the signage that we use down there as far as the locations. I have a lady that missed the bus, and I don't know how to direct her to what is accurate as far as the stop location, what side of the street, and all that.
Okay.
So, you want to get to the office and call me back?
Yeah.
I don't have all that in your head.
Do you want like a better map, or what side of the road the stop sign's on?
Yeah, that would be really helpful. If I could get something that has the stop locations on a map for Martin Luther King specifically, that would eliminate my problem.
Okay. Yeah, I can get that to you. Just MLK or the entire route, or?
I'm sorry?
Just MLK or the entire route?
I mean, if you want to do the entire route, the one I've got to address today is Martin Luther King, specifically at Burnett, coming to Middletown.
Okay.
But if you can give me, I mean, there's only 3 stops there. I don't know if there's a way to do a map that shows where the stops are on MLK. That would be really helpful.
Okay, I can do that. When I get to MTS, I'll send you something. I'll be at the city garage.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah, whenever just you let me know when you're sending it. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Maybe we'll devise that capital itself.
After the break, an economist with a big idea for how we should do elections that he concedes has a probably 1 in 5 chance of happening in this country. But he says it is crucial to protect democracy.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Sattva. Sattva luxury mattresses are every bit as elegant as the most expensive brands, but because they're sold online, they're about half the price. Visit SAATVA.com/NPR and save an additional $200.
Support for NPR and the following message come from TIAA. Wyclef Jean and TIAA are on a mission to give back. More than half of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So the new single, Paper Right, is on a mission to start closing the gap. With TIAA, streams turn into donations to a nonprofit called First Generation Investors that teaches students how to invest. Stream now and help them stack for a great cause. This message comes from NPR sponsor Carvana. With Carvana's new value tracker, you can track your car's value over time and learn what's driving it with personalized insights and updates. Stay up to speed with your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker. Visit Carvana.com.
Hi, it's Terry Gross, the host of Fresh Air. We bring you in-depth, long-form interviews with actors, directors, musicians, authors, journalists, and more. Listen to our Peabody Award-winning Fresh Air podcast from WHYY and NPR.
Hey, it's Sarah Gonzalez.
And Dave Blanchard.
And you gotta check out our recent bonus episode where we pull back the Planet Money curtain a little bit and talk about those of us who make this show and some of our firsts, like what our first jobs were.
Yeah, like you'll find out which of us hauled compost for work.
Then what it was like to work on our very first Planet Money episode.
You can hear that if and only if you're a Planet Money Plus supporter. If that's you, thank you. And if it's not, it's easy to sign up.
You get bonus content, sponsor-free listening, and support NPR in the process. Go to plus.npr.org. Okay, so nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this.
Nice meeting you, Sarah.
I appreciate it. And introduce yourself to us. What's your name? What do you do?
Yeah, my name is Daron Asamoglu. I'm an institute professor at MIT. I'm an economist.
One of your specialties is like political economy?
Yeah, political economy institution.
Political economy looks at, among other things, how different political regimes like democracies or dictatorships affect economic outcomes like growth, education, healthcare. And Daron's research has found that democratic countries grow much faster, like their GDP per capita grows. But also,
they reduce infant mortality, child mortality, improve health outcomes. So there are a bunch of things that democracies do better. So if you have democratic systems malfunction or collapse, that's really not good for human rights reasons, civil rights reasons, or other reasons, but it's also bad for economic reasons. And the US right now has come to a point where our democracy is actually in danger.
This got real bleak real fast.
Yes. So there are a lot of aspects of U.S. democracy that don't look so healthy right now. I mean, we've had a coup attempt, and also we have big gridlocks in the House.
Like, it took forever to elect a speaker. Congress can't seem to agree on a long-term budget to fund the government. And Daron says that all of this is bad for the economy. Like, the markets do not like this kind of gridlock. And for Daron, you can attribute some of the bad things caused by gridlock to polarization, more partisanship, more extreme candidates. And he says the problem behind all of this is the way the U.S. does elections. So, in the U.S., it is a winner-takes-all majoritarian system. If you're running for Congress in some district, you just need the most votes in that district to win.
Republicans get 51%, Democrats get 49%, and Republicans win this.
When you have this kind of system, that means that those 49% of people who voted for other parties don't really get their views represented in Congress. They kind of get zero out of the deal. Daron says this is the problem with the U.S. election system. Not everyone is represented.
And once I get 51%, I don't care about what the rest think.
And okay, it's kind of always been this way, right? This is how the U.S. does congressional elections. But Daron says that these days, candidates like really, really don't have to care what people who didn't vote for them think, because congressional districts have become less and less competitive. More and more seats are super safe, it would never go to a Democrat kind of seats, which means that the Republican running in that district can be more extreme, and vice versa. Daron's big idea to help solve this is to get rid of congressional districts completely. No more districts. So right now, you have multiple districts in Massachusetts, and everyone runs for that district. You would not do that in this case, or you would not have districts.
So you will not have separate districts within Massachusetts, each one going to the majority. Instead, you would have a Massachusetts-wide tally of the votes.
It would be a statewide election. And if you have to appeal to the entire state now, he says, maybe candidates wouldn't be so extreme. Plus, in his world, you wouldn't even vote for the candidate at all anymore.
No, there are no votes for Sarah.
You would just vote for the party. Like, what is he even talking about? But okay, this is Daron's moment. The way to accomplish this, he says, would be to completely get rid of the majoritarian winner-takes-all election system and replace it with a different election system that many democratic nations use: proportional representation. So, for example, it is election day. It's a congressional race. There would have been some kind of vetting process by party leaders or whoever to come up with a list. Each party would have a list of candidates that is basically like, here are all the people we would like to have in Congress. Like, you know, we got Sarah on our list, we got Daron on our list, we've got Vakash and Derek. Oh, so it's like, I see the list.
Yes.
Daron's on there, Sarah's on there. I like these people. There's a lot of people on this list I like, so my vote is going to go to whatever, Green Party, whatever the party it is that we belong to, because I like the names I saw on the list.
Or at least I don't find them very objectionable, because in many cases
I don't hate
the list may also have names that are objectionable that actually puts the voters off.
Right. And then you go, no, I'm going Working Families Party, because they have a better list of names on their list. So everyone votes for whatever party they think has the best list of candidates, and whatever percentage of votes each party gets, that determines how many candidates from their lists get a seat in Congress. So let's say there are 100 House seats for a state to fill. Everyone votes, and I don't know, Green Party gets 60% of the vote. That means they get 60 seats in Congress. Republicans get 30% of the vote. That means they get 30 seats in Congress. Working Families get 10% of the vote. So they too get 10 seats. 10 people from their list have made it. So everyone gets a little representation.
They're going to get 10 candidates.
That's a great idea.
Person on that list.
Oh, and then sorry if you're number 15.
If you're number 11, you just missed it. Yes, exactly. That's why the list would be very important.
The people at the top of the list are more likely to get a seat. So there's an incentive to put your most extreme candidates that might put people off toward the bottom of the list, and maybe the more moderate candidates toward the top. It does not sound simple.
Well, once we get into the groove of it, it will be simple. You were used to what we have, that's why.
Daron does not think that there's a very good chance of the U.S. changing its election system, but he says it is the most fair, most democratic version of elections. It would not be majority takes all and sorry to everyone else. So those are the three big ideas. We get rid of congressional districts, we give all babies a trust fund, and we ban left turns. And we wanted to see how these ideas landed, like even just among our three experts. So we asked them to each vote on one of these ideas that they thought would improve the world the most. And every idea got one vote. So I guess they all convinced at least one person. What do you think of their ideas? Do you have a better big idea? Let us know. We're everywhere at Planet Money. Coming up on the next Planet Money,
It was a dark and stormy night.
we follow Captain Skip Strong as he attempts a daring rescue at sea.
once he has to shut that engine down because of the fireballs in the engine room, he's getting dragged 2.5 to 3 knots towards the coast of Florida. It's like, holy, this guy's having a bad night.
The events of that night raised kind of an impossible question. How do you put a price on doing the right thing? Today's show was produced by Willa Rubin and Emma Peasley with help from Sam Yellowhorse Kessler. It was edited by Dave Blanchard and engineered by Robert Rodriguez. Fact-checking by Sierra Juarez. Alex Goldmark is our executive producer. I'm Sarah Gonzalez. This is NPR. Thanks for listening. This message comes from NPR sponsor Lisa. When you buy a Lisa mattress, you're not the only one getting a better night's rest. Lisa donates thousands of mattresses each year to shelters and those in need. Learn more about Lisa at leesa.com.
Science is not just for the PhDs of the world. It's for everyone. On the Shortwave podcast, we dig into the latest news with a humorous touch, all in under 15 minutes. We might not take ourselves seriously, but we take science very seriously. Listen now to the Shortwave podcast from NPR.
When Argentina won the World Cup, it meant so much to so many people, but there's one person in particular for whom it meant everything. Soccer legend Lionel Messi. In The Last Cup, a bilingual podcast series, I explore why. Listen now to The Last Cup podcast from NPR and Futuro Studios.
Near-death experiences are pre-existing beliefs. That's what they thought would happen, and there's absolutely
right, because a child doesn't really have enough time to have too much of a pre-existing belief.
Exactly.
You wouldn't think.
Exactly.
Man, I've been so dehydrated from flying around, from sweating, from letting fluid out of my body. You will be dehydrated, baby. And liquid IV helps. Gosh, it'll turn water just into a beautiful nectar that just fills you up. It really will. With 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients for everyday wellness. Liquid IV hydrates 2 times faster than water alone. All in a single sugar-free stick. I've had it. The flavors are remarkable. They got one of them. It's called white lime or something. Or what is it? Dang, white peach or something. God, I love that one. Rehydrate yourself in this new year. Grab your Liquid IV Hydration Multiplier, sugar-free in bulk nationwide at Costco. Or get 20% off your first order when you go to liquidiv.com and use code THEO at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code THEO at liquidiv.com. The new year for many people means finding out ways to save some money. You know what I'm talking about. Some women will start cutting their husband's hair a lot around this time of year. And they're saving money, but the husband has to look kind of bad or whatever. But after the holidays, we could all use a little cash in our pockets. That's why Ibotta is here to help. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. Who don't want a toy? So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $145 per year. That's right, and right now Ibotta, I-B-O-T-T-A, is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using code THEO when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code THEO. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store and use code THEO. One thing that I found that was really interesting that really made me lock in and want to learn more was when you said that people of different religious beliefs and things like that, and they all had the same they had the same characteristics of their experience if they had a near-death experience.
That you're exactly right.
That really shocked. I was like, wow. So there's that. Anyway, yeah, that's one of the things that really hooked me in.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. In my research, we've had, well, the website, our research website, has been translated into over 30 different languages. So as a result, we can do by far the largest
Oh,
cross-cultural
you have
study
to do that,
in
because
the
otherwise,
world.
if you get like, you get some dude, you get some guy fresh out the Mario or something, he's like, we was dreaming,
Got
like,
it.
hold on,
Well,
bro.
yeah, and that's what's exciting when you have pull in near-death experiences literally from all around the world in their native language. So we have about 60 what we call non-Western near-death experiences. These are in countries where they're not predominantly Judeo-Christian, and they're from just, you name the religious background, I've run into it. And remarkably, these non-Western near-death experiences, the content, what occurs, the elements are strikingly similar to typical Western near-death experiences. And in fact, I've co-authored a scholarly paper with an Iranian near-death experience researcher, looked at a couple dozen people that had near-death experiences in Iran, exactly what I'm seeing in my series. No matter where on earth you have your near-death experience, amazingly, it doesn't make any difference, Theo, whether you're, say, a Muslim in Egypt or a Hindu in India, or a Christian in the United States, or no religious belief at all. Wherever on the planet you have your near-death experience, whatever age, the content, what occurs, is going to be strikingly similar.
Did you feel like over time, though, that you became, what am I the term I'm looking for? Like, you became, that's what you started looking for? You know what I'm talking about?
What's
the term I'm looking for? You know what I'm talking about?
Confirmation bias.
Did you worry about that? Did you take that into account?
Oh, absolutely. As a researcher, I have to carefully minimize anything that would affect wrongly my interpretation. And confirmation bias is one thing, but that's the glory of having the survey and then archiving the results and then posting them all. Theo, we have over 4,000 near-death experiences posted. We have scores of non-Western near-death experiences.
Give me one of those that was interesting, that kind of really surprised you. Is there one that stands out, like a non-Western?
Yeah, we have, there was a lady who was literally dying of Hodgkin lymphoma.
Oh, gosh.
And, tragically, was given basically no chance of survival. And right at death's door, she had a near-death experience. A profoundly detailed near-death experience, and as part of that, she became aware that if she was to choose to return to earthly life, that the lab results that were just drawn would come back showing she was recovering. She was starting to respond, and if she chose not to return to her earthly life, that the lab results would indicate she was on her path to irreversible permanent death. Amazingly, she recovered, and when she recovered, she had an amazing, highly detailed near-death experience with most of the characteristics we've talked about now.
Well, see, that's interesting, because that makes me think that some of the information that you get in a near-death experience, right? And I hate that we keep having to say the term over and over again, but we have to say it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we really do.
Some of the information that you get during an experience like that, I wonder if some of it then, because at first I'm thinking it comes from the other side. It comes from the great beyond, that. But then now I'm thinking that if you're getting information where you see that you may be getting lab results coming that would be different if you return, that makes me wonder if some of that information is somehow coming out of your body, like on this side, and service, and
Well,
does that make any sense?
Well, normally
does it make sense or not?
Yeah, it does, because you would have to say maybe you have a personal, deep down sense that this is going to happen. This is going to happen.
Right.
However,
if that's the case, then I would be thinking that some of that near-death experience is influenced on this side of life, as opposed to what part of me was leaning towards it being influenced on the other side of life.
Absolutely. So, it's very reasonable to hypothesize that maybe something that occurs or is described in near-death experiences is just because they had that sense, that inner awareness in their physical body. But Theo, they're unconscious or clinically dead when they have their near-death experiences, so they really can't gather from that sense, that memory, that subconscious part of themselves, because everything is shut down when they have a near-death experience.
Are there other choices? I know you mentioned early on that there were choices that people had to make. So that one is a lady saying lab results could make her, or upcoming lab results could be different. Were there other choices that came up?
Yeah, I'll tell you the most poignant choice that we encountered in near-death experiences, and that is a choice to stay in that unearthly, beautiful realm, the environment they're in, off their spirits, or the choice to return to their earthly life and struggle to overcome that life-threatening event that they caused the near-death experience. what
I
is it?
see.
And this is where it gets really interesting, Theo. At that moment of decision, even though people having a near-death experience, everything that they knew up to that time, friends, family, loved ones, decades of their life often, is their earthly life. And yet, what they're experiencing in this unearthly realm, overwhelming sense of peace and love, those are about the two most common words used. And they often describe that they feel this unearthly, beautiful realm is their real home, their true home. But the great majority of people that are in that unearthly, heavenly realm that make a decision, they're asked to make a decision, want to stay there. They want to leave their earthly life and not come back. And believe me, that is a difficult decision. They will often argue with the beings.
Oh,
That
yeah,
can
it's
be
like you go to Destin the first time. You been to Destin?
Oh yeah, so that's really interesting.
Never
But
went
that's
there.
just how compelling and beautiful and what the sense is like in this unearthly, beautiful realm that they're in your death experience.
Wow. See, and so that makes me believe that it's not like ayahuasca, because in ayahuasca, and I only compare it to that because like I've done, you know, some of the other psychotropics, LSD and mushrooms, right? And those are the only ones I've done. I know there's a lot of new ones and people are, you know, sucking on animals or whatever, and you know, licking frogs or whatever. There's some stuff.
I hope not a lot, Theo.
I mean, I know a dude
All
who's
right.
done a thing
Yeah.
or two down there, you know, a couple of times.
Well, I don't even taste in my mouth, but moving on.
Look, I know a guy north of Panama City. I don't know if he's ever gotten high, but he's definitely done some things. You know?
Okay. Goodness gracious.
But on ayahuasca, I never felt a sense of peace. It's always a sense of learning and constant, like, not negotiating, but revealing and catharsis, but not a big, some relief, but never. It feels very much like you're in a long period of therapy, which sometimes can be extremely intense. So it doesn't feel like you're in this, you know, a million thread count, you know, space.
Yeah.
Which that sounds like what you're talking about. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, is there, and if so, people, some people might have near-death experience, but they just die. You're like, oh shit, we didn't get the information.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, at a life-threatening event, you know, certainly, unfortunately, a lot of people will ultimately, permanently, and irreversibly die. So that's you know, that's it. However, that brings up an interesting point. We do have a small series of what we call shared near-death experience. These are two or more people that simultaneously had a life-threatening event.
No.
And true story. We've got we're up to about 20 posted on the website, so it's not a real
Like
small
death
series.
twins kind of.
So what happens? I mean, you name it: auto accidents, collapsing building, you know, some kind of accident out in nature. These are all common precipitating events. So two or more people, boom, they're in that life-threatening event. In a shared near-death experience, they can interact with each other. They can be aware of their physical body down below. In these shared near-death experiences, at least in the series I have, one goes on to permanently, irreversibly die. The other returns back to their body, and then when they recover, they can talk about a shared near-death experience. Now, Theo, that is some of the strongest evidence I can conceive of, that for those permanently, irreversibly dying, what you observe in a near-death experience is that initial pathway.
But you're saying one of them died and one of them didn't?
Mm-hmm.
But if one of them died, then how do you know that that person had the experience too?
Because the other person shared an experience with them. They talked, they interacted, they communicated.
So the one that lived said that they both
of
had
them
an
were together.
out-of-body experience.
For example, we had from Canada, we had a bad car accident, and a gentleman was driving with his fiancée. Boom, car fell asleep and hit a tree. Both him and his fiancée had that out-of-body experience, holding hands. I mean, they were fiancés.
Oh, yes.
Rose up, and then they were able to see this unearthly, beautiful realm in the distance. There were four beings that came up to them. Two of them went to her, two of them went to him, and they separated. They're holding hands. They felt so much peace and love, they described. He wanted to say no, but felt so compellingly. That's why it was remarkable that he felt so much peace and love that he didn't want to resist it. So he watched the two beings carry his fiancée toward this beautiful unearthly realm in the distance. The other two beings gently lowered him back down to the car. From way above the car, he saw the front end on fire, and then he went back into his body, and he felt, when he returned to consciousness, his fiancée leaning on his shoulder, as she was when he had the accident, and he knew immediately fiancée was dead. She was an empty shell, and that he had left her with those beings above. That's a shared near-death experience, and very dramatic. Shared near-death experiences are...
So that's unbelievable.
I mean, out of 4,000, to have maybe about 20. That's how rare they are, and yet they're so dramatic in terms of providing evidence. For those that permanently, irreversibly die, their consciousness continues to live and will eventually be reunited.
See, that's so wild. The fact that two people had it. Now, was there ever two people that had it and both of them lived?
There have been, not in my series, we have, there has been a report of firefighters. They were called the Hot Shots in Arizona, and they were battling a fire, and the fire changed direction. Yeah, and the wind changed direction and trapped them. And so there were many of the firefighters that died, and virtually all of them had a life-threatening event. And they were aware of each other, and then ultimately came back to report that remarkable shared near-death experiences where several lived and several died.
Oh man,
I was at for food for thought. Those just blow me away. I mean, I tell you, even after 4,000 near-death experiences, when I read these shared near-death experiences, I'm still in awe, even after 25 years.
Can you tell when some are fake?
We are very careful to investigate whether they're fake. Theo, we ask many of our survey questions in a similar concept we're asking, but worded differently in different sections of the survey. So as a result, we use that tried and true method to make sure that the near-death experience responses are valid. Above and beyond that, as a doctor, I can certainly spot things that don't add up medically. But finally, if the overwhelming majority of people share true and honest near-death experiences, even those people that share falsified near-death experiences, if they're that rare, it isn't really going to change our overall understanding of what happens during a near-death experience and what their meaning is.
What are some things that people do where that if they're telling a fake near-death experience where you can kind of spot those?
Right.
Because there's got to be commonalities there too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when we do our survey, we always post it anonymously. They don't get paid anything. They literally have no public recognition because their experience.
No real
no incentive. No incentive at all. Right. For them, no clout at all. No direction for them to share a falsified.
Yeah, no coffin clout or whatever they call it.
It would take probably most people, especially a detailed account, over an hour to fill that out. So people generally aren't going to do that just for laughs. So I think in general, and certainly what we're observing in our near-death experience accounts are strikingly similar to what all other researchers are finding in their research series. So I'm reasonably confident that these great majority, if not virtually all,
are legitimate.
Yeah.
Is it mostly is it more women that fill them out than men? Because women, I think, low-key want to die all the time. Still,
well.
Or could they love date line, you know what I'm saying? They're always like, oh, they're always leaving a window open.
That's a great question. It's probably pretty close to 50-50, but I'll tell you why. I think, Theo, guys like us are just a little more inclined than women to drive the car fast, to go do risky things, swim in places we shouldn't swim. We've all been, I mean, it's a guy thing. So we may be a little more predisposed to have fun in some risky way. Women, I think, are a little less inclined to do that, so I think that may help explain why it's about 50-50.
Right, because you have more men that are actually getting close with death and accidents.
Right.
But you have more women who may share stories like that.
Yeah, they're more inclined to share women, childbirth, and the severe complications and clinical death during childbirth. We have a huge number of those type of near-death experiences.
Have you ever had a woman that had a child, and then the child, I guess the child wouldn't be able to recollect something like that?
Yeah. No, we don't have any. If a lady had a near-death experience, there's no. Obviously they are very good at delivering the baby, even if she has a life-threatening event. But there's no real discussion later from that child of, oh, I had a shared near-death experience.
Right, yeah, like years later.
Yeah, because that would be,
that'd be too hard to remember. What motivates you to care about this?
I am fascinated by near-death experiences. Even after 25 years and 4,000 near-death experiences.
You ever been in Busch Gardens?
Yeah, I have. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome, too. Isn't it?
That's true.
I love all that kind of stuff.
It's fun. Well, near-death experiences, to me, it continues to remind me that there's an afterlife, a wonderful afterlife, and that's for all of us. I'm a physician that treats patients with cancer. These are my patients that have life-threatening events, and I'm involved with them every day. What I know about near-death experiences help me to help them in their journey with their battle with cancer in a way with more courage, more confidence, that even if we ultimately don't cure them, that in the end they're going to have a wonderful afterlife. And as I've told them, you're going to be in a much better place than those left on our earthly life. So
Yeah.
I think that's really certainly something to look forward to.
I hope I believe that too. Because even just living is so, like, that's what I always say when people are like, I don't believe in an afterlife. I'm like, all right.
Alright. Man. I really changed my plans.
Well, like, okay, you know, because here's why. My biggest proof is that we lived at all. That's my, like, at least believe in reincarnation, because we already lived.
Yeah.
How do you then don't even believe you're here then, if you're not even going to believe it's possible? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I'm doing this right now. You're going to tell me, and I came out of nothing. I don't know where I was. You know, I got some vague ideas, and, you know, I'll sketch some stuff every now and then, but I don't have any real information. But to think this couldn't happen again, to me, seems asinine. It's because you have proof, like, you're living in proof. Like, it'd be different if you weren't, but you're freaking living in proof that existence from nothing is possible. Now, I know you came from people when you came from sex, but they eventually, we don't know where they came from, you know?
Yeah.
We don't know where life came from, that's the thing.
Sure. No, and absolutely. That's
sorry to yell at you.
No, this is great. Hey, Theo, this is what I find, among other things, very inspiring about near-death experiences. I mean, here over and over is very powerful evidence that we do have a life after death. Our consciousness goes on. We're not really going, both for us, our friends, our family, our loved ones, when we have that final end of our earthly physical life, there's a much bigger picture, a much bigger continuation of consciousness, eternal and infinite, as best I can tell from near-death experiences, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever earthly life gets miserable, difficult, we've all been there, all of us.
Yeah.
And you always have that thought in the back of your mind from near-death experiences. Wow, here is the evidence, powerful evidence that we go on.
Well, and it makes me think, like, you know, we used to bring it back up, that Arrowid site. Was that Arrowid?
Yeah, erowid.org. Yeah.
EROWID. So if you'll zoom in on here, the vaults of Arrowid, and this was the site you were talking about, where people share their experiences from different psychedelic techniques and methods.
Yeah, psychotropic drugs.
Psychotropic drugs, and it also says on here there's breathing, dreaming, drumming, fasting. So it seems like there's a lot of different, like, modalities people use to get to different. Now maybe all these are while they're under the influence of psychedelic drugs.
No, these are obviously different ways in which an altered consciousness can be achieved.
Right, okay.
And that's what's so cool about this site. I mean, here are the original first-person accounts.
Yes.
A lot like my own nderf.org website,
Totally.
where there's really no, they're posted typically anonymously. There's no real incentive for them to make any of this up.
Right.
These are people that just want to share with the world what happened during their experiences.
Yeah.
Often they're going to select out their most dramatic, interesting experiences, but it is a treasure trove of altered states of consciousness.
Yeah, I love this. And so some of these on here are somewhere it seems like it's not just drug induced, not just so psychotropic. That means drug, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So some of these it has breathing, dancing, dreaming, drumming, fasting, meditation, prayer, martial arts, yoga. Just has different modalities. Some I've used half of those. Breathing. I worked with a comedian, this girl Blair Sochi, and she does breath work. And I had an experience there that was very. It wasn't like a near-death experience, but it was beyond something I'd ever had before. Where it locked up all of my muscles, and I was just with my some like way my conscience was, and it took I remember just tears coming out of me, like it was like a cleansing of some sort. Martial arts, I've done MMA where at the end of the class you just sat there and just like start crying because you've done so much, like just different ways your muscles and releasing things and stuff, and I think a long time ago they used to do a lot of sweating, a lot of meditation, historically. That's kind of what I was getting at, was like, I wonder if there was more connection with the afterlife in previous centuries and ages of time, because they used less technological modalities and more like actual physical practicing of things. Even if you go look at like the Egyptians, they would draw and bury their dead, sometimes with tombs, sometimes with tunnels that they said would lead to another little tomb that just had gifts of the afterlife. And like they had just, it feels like they had a much more spiritual connection maybe with here and something beyond, because to build a tomb and bury somebody with all your worldly goods that you have, to take all your money and bury it with a friend so that they can use it in the next realm. It's a lot of that's really fascinating, because we don't practice a lot of that anymore. Now somebody will slip you a perk or slip you a thing of cigarettes or something on the way,
Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up, Theo.
Does it make any sense what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And in fact, I'll take that and run with it. Near-death experiences, as dramatic as they are, and as much as they point to that afterlife, they're really a subset of that bigger picture, just like what you were talking about. The umbrella is spiritual experiences in general. Absolutely you can have that type of spiritual experience with martial arts. I was a brown belt in karate. I get that. I've walked a mile in those, I can't say shoes because we're barefoot.
Yeah.
So, but on top of that, you can have certainly meditation experiences, can produce some dramatic experiences. The scholarly literature describes these as mystical experiences. Okay. And there's a whole wealth of literature out there about people that can have very dramatic experiences. Sometimes they even reproduce many of the characteristics of near-death experiences, and yet they're all part of that, if you will, the umbrella, that bigger picture, all converging with evidence on the fact that there's consciousness far beyond what we're aware of in our earthly life, that there's an afterlife, that our consciousness is much more than just what we think with, how we interact with other people, our conscious earthly everyday experience. That's just a subset of a much bigger picture of consciousness, just like what you were saying.
Yeah, all of those things seem to touch, they seem to find ways, I don't know, I just feel like historically we probably, even though now we're able to catalog things better, back then you had to draw it on a wall, or you had to whisper to your buddy, and if he gets down, he comes across a rare STD on a mountaintop, and it's, nobody knows what happened. And so it's like, just different times, it just, now we can catalog more, I feel like, but the experience we have is kind of, we have less experiences maybe, I don't know. it seems like our forefathers, this was like a Saturday night, they get together in a sweat lodge and they wanted to see something, but it was make your own Netflix in your brain.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're really onto something there. Here's my take on it. I think years ago, centuries ago, I think there was probably more openness to these types of experiences. I think there was more, we didn't have that sort of scientific rigidity about what the brain can do and what it can't do. I think people collectively were more inclined to share these stories, to have people believe them, to value them, and as a result of that, allow them to be shared in a verbal tradition, probably much more so than we have today, because people were probably less afraid to share that. These were more tight-knit communities, and they knew each other, they interacted with each other, and so I think there was more trust than we have today. Today, we're sort of apart from each other more. I think it's harder to develop that interpersonal trust, perhaps as much as existed centuries ago. That's a shame, among many other reasons. People today may be less inclined to share with others their spiritual experiences because they're afraid they'll be judged.
Yeah. I want to let you know that the best way to learn a language is immersion. That's right. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. That's what I like to use. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. And here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get 55% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at Babbel, BABBEL.com/Theo. Get 55% off at Babbel.com/Theo. Spelled BABBEL.com/THEO. Rules and restrictions may apply. And best of luck in learning your new language. That's really, really exciting. Yeah, or it's interesting because it used to be, sometimes you would be the chief of a village if you had gotten to, connect with the third eye, there was a lot of enhancement there seemed to be a lot of more social value to it. And I think we're still going through this metamorphosis maybe where we tried a lot of medicines to cure people, like a lot of Western medicine that is proven to be, or slowly more and more proving to be very much not as helpful as we thought, causing more addiction than it is probably benefits overall, maybe. Maybe I'm saying that to a doctor, maybe I shouldn't. But that we're getting more to where people are, I feel like we're trying to get back to nature and to finding ways to A, take care of ourselves better, and then B, use other modalities to solve particularly things that we struggle with thinking and feeling wise than medicine. Does that make any sense?
Oh, I think I see where you're going with that. Now more than ever, we start with a focus on the patient. What's best for the patient? Well, prevention, certainly. Treatments that have less toxicity, very strong focus in my specialty, radiation oncology, when we treat cancer. We're more interested in the totality of the patient. How are these treatments affecting them? How can we mitigate these adverse effects? How can we sort of consider the patient totally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and help do everything that we can as healthcare providers in a way that we perhaps hadn't even thought about before. So there's it's kind of interesting. We're really kind of at a threshold now where with a focus like that, I know we're curing more people, especially with cancer, especially than we ever did before, but I think importantly, we're helping people to live better than ever before because we're so focused on the total patient.
Have there been experiences where you've been able to discuss with cancer patients who weren't fortunate enough to get into remission, that you felt like talking about the afterlife and possibilities and people's experiences have been helpful to them?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, I'm a well-known near-death experience researcher, so over and over we have patients or their family members Google, who is this Dr. Long guy? And oh my gosh, here's my hundreds of times I've talked to the media and been around. And for people that are aware of that, they will generally come talk with me about that next time they see me. That can be profoundly inspirational to somebody who's got a life-threatening illness. They're in fear about that. Their family, their loved ones, they know they might not make it. And yet here's the research, the information I have, powerful evidence that there is life after death, that there's a bigger picture for who we are, what we are, that we're not just physical brain function, that we are consciousness that's going to survive our earthly death. It is incredibly important to patients that come to that understanding. I've spent huge amounts of time talking about that with patients, and I love that. I consider that to be a very special and important part of how I practice medicine, going in that extra dimension.
Yeah. Well, it's for one, it's a blessing that you care about this because you're also in a field where people are having to deal with that, sooner maybe than they expected. Have you ever been there when somebody was passing away and just kind of like been like, hey, come on back,
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done CPR for real a few times, and that I tell you what,
look around while you're down there.
The first thing they say in the books is when you have someone codes or heart stops, and you have to try to bring them back from the brink. Check your own pulse first too. That's pretty eerie.
But because you can freak out.
Oh, it's spooky. I mean, your heart rate gets frantic.
When you get their CPR.
Well, when I do it for real, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When we brought people, I mean, this is literally unexpected. Typically, it's life and death. We're frantically trying to.
Oh, especially, dude, I'd be worried. Like, if say there's house music playing in the place, I would be worried. I would just. What if you just tap into it? Like, what is going on?
Oh, come on. No, you.
I just don't want to be laying a James Blake track on somebody, like.
At least, I mean, I can't speak for others, but I'll tell you when I've done CPR,
what you're doing.
You stay focused, and you want to make sure you're doing just the right number of chest compressions.
I'm just saying, you get some guy like me in there, and it's just, get out the way for Cotton Eye Joe, and just playing that. You know what I'm saying?
You'd make an awesome doctor. I love that, Theo. We need to get, because that would be. I haven't heard a doctor ever share that, but hey, that's.
I think I would be disbarred immediately. I'm just saying that, like, if you're not really locked in on what you're doing, if you're doing CPR on somebody, and somebody just, lays some kind of a track in the distance, anything can happen,
Yeah.
Have you ever had a near-death experience?
No, I haven't. Thank goodness. So.
Now, is there a part of you that, because at some point you gotta, put your muffins where the oven is. You know what I'm saying, bro?
Like that.
And like, you know what I'm saying? At some point,
okay,
people were gonna, you know what I'm saying? If you want to write the third book, you gotta have to go over there.
But let me tell you how it works in the real world here, Theo. People that have had a near-death experience, in general, typically are not near-death experience researchers. And I think the reason for that is they know about near-death experience. It is grippingly real. They understand it. They understand its implications in their life. And so as a result of that, they're not asking questions like me and so many other people that do research in this area that want to know, is it real? What happened? So again, the near-death experience cures any near-death experience disbelief, that's for sure.
Does part of you ever wish, like, and it's not, nobody wants to, because near-death experience, death is in the middle of it. That's the tricky part. The rest of it you can handle. But death is the part you gotta risk, But is any part of you ever, like, where if you say you ever been skiing and then you fall, you're like, oh, this could be it, let's see what happens here?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have so many irons in the fire in my life. I've got full-time medical practice. I love doing research and sharing about near-death experience. I've got so much going on. I'm very careful not to get into a life-threatening event.
Yeah,
I get where you're coming from. Sure, at one level, it'd be, I think, an adjunct to my research to say, this is what I experienced and here's what happened. But don't you think that might lead you get a little confirmation bias?
I agree.
And I'd start to see other near-death experiences through the filter of my own
Yeah, dude, I can't
experience.
believe earlier I was like, don't you think there's a lot of confirmation bias? And then I just try to talk you into confirmation.
Well, again, when I start my near-death experience research, my scientist coat goes on. I have to be very careful to use the best scientific methods and avoid those kind of pitfalls that are common in science. And,
You're still science. So you're still applying science to
Right,
this.
absolutely.
And I think that's one thing that makes it more valid, We had a guy, Dr. Max Moore, on. You know who this guy is?
I've heard the name, I just can't place it.
He runs the, what's it where they froze Walt Disney?
Oh, cryogenics.
Oh yeah, he's like a philosopher. He's like a futurist. He's a director of. He was a CEO and a president of Alcor Life Extension, and that's where they do like cryonics and cryogenics, where they freeze people, right? So, we talked with him one time, and some people were like, "Oh, this whole thing's a scam," right? And I looked at the financials of it. It wouldn't really be worth it, I don't think, if it were a scam. There's just not that much money, it doesn't seem like, in it. But it does seem like it's just kind of, there's just sort of this blind hope that one day they will be able to, like, reincarnate, to rehabilitate the physical us that's here, right? What are your thoughts on that? Like, because it's not really the same world that you're in, but there's this, the afterlife is part of it. You don't hear much about the afterlife.
Right. Well, Theo, as a researcher and a scientist and as a physician, I'm interested in pretty much any aspects of possible survival of consciousness. And here we have groups that are freezing bodies, cryogenics, hoping that people will be able to be resuscitated decades, centuries from now, and literally be brought back to life. Well, a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I can't get over scientifically the fact that when you freeze cells, human cells, below 32 degrees, the water in the cells expands. Boom, it busts the cell membranes, and the cells are literally dead. How you can bring back completely busted, trashed, if you will, cells in an entire living organism back to life is absolutely outside.
I know they were using liquid nitrogen to do it, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's cold. So that would be.
And I think they do it at a quick enough level where they're saying that doesn't happen, that decomposition doesn't happen. That's what their claimant is.
The ability to suddenly freeze an entire physical organism. I mean, I'm
like
not
flash freezing or whatever.
That would be, and again, I'm not an authority on
right,
that.
Of course,
that,
we're just
that kind of doesn't pass my sniff test. But I think, moreover, the bigger picture here is people so afraid of leaving their earthly life, so believing that earthly life is all that they are and all that they can be. I think if they knew what the overwhelming, consistent message is in near-death experiences, that our physical life isn't who we really are, it isn't the end, that what we are, who we are, is that eternal, infinite consciousness that goes on living after our physical death here on Earth.
Yes, tell me about some of that, because so that's an area we haven't really gotten into. What are people saying? Because these are people that they came back, right? So they didn't go, they either didn't get accepted or whatever right now. We're not judging. There's tons of applications, right?
All right.
The afterlife gets countless applications every day. These are interviewees who it feels like God over there.
Right. Okay, and that's funny. I mean, there's actually been a study. Someone went through literally over 1,000 of our near-death experiences, and when people are saying,
over you guys, did you mean?
Yeah, our ones we have posted.
Right.
When I say we've studied over 4,000 near-death experiences, those are posted on our NDER.
Are all the ones you get posted or not all of them?
Every single one that gives us permission, which is way over 95%, is posted.
But man, you don't have any, there's no let's make sure, there's no protocol for you guys to be like, come on, this one this one has Joaquin Phoenix in it, like this one didn't.
The integrity of the research I do requires that no matter what the content of the near-death experience, if it appears to have occurred during a life-threatening event, sometimes I'll, unless it's blatantly falsified, hey, Theo, we got 2 near-death experiences in a row where they encountered Pamela Anderson, and there's obviously some teenage, probably boys. They were having a good old time, and boom, boom. Okay, I get that. That's fake, and that's rare. Thank goodness, because again, it just takes too long to do that. But I have a whole write-up on how we very carefully validate these near-death experiences as real. I understand we have a responsibility to the world to make sure that we have posted valid experiences, because other researchers are using this. Interestingly, artificial intelligence has gone through the internet, and that's one of the major drivers of artificial intelligence understanding of near-death experience is the over 4,000 we have posted.
Right, so you guys have so many of them that obviously people are using it. But yeah, I was just trying to get if there's any barrier to entry between your site. So there is some. If people are saying Pamela Anderson or Samuel Jackson or whatever, you're like, I don't know.
But yeah, so the integrity of the research we do is such that
there's a lot of integrity, but there's some barrier to entry.
Well, not really. This is less than 1% of people that have shared what we consider to be obviously falsified experiences.
Okay.
So it's rare with that order of
But you take some down there, obviously.
Well, it's not. We will, and sometimes we will post it, and then subsequently, these are usually people that have a commercial interest in their account, and as time goes on, we may come to understand that they falsified, embellished their account,
using you guys as
absolutely. They're out of there. So that's rare.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about the integrity of humans in general. I mean, people that have a near-death experience, that is in general the most amazing, influential experience of their life.
So let's talk about that.
Sacred to them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. So people say it's sacred to them. You know. What are some of the things if people go there, they're on death's doorstep and they get to come back? You know, nobody was home. They knocked. They got some information, maybe. You know. But what is some of the things that they? What do we? Have you learned anything about the afterlife? I guess, or that next step. Have you learned anything about that, or do you feel like you've learned anything?
Absolutely, I am extremely interested in that. After years of doing research and being aware that they were remarkably consistently describing unearthly, heavenly realms, obviously as a researcher, I'm danged interested in that. So in our most recent version of the survey, we've got a lot of questions where I try to drill down on that, try to understand more about that remarkably consistent perspective on what lies beyond this door. That's where Theo gets dang interesting. One thing we're talking interesting here. So what's it like? Okay, first of all, you have to understand it's radically different from that physical earthly life that we know.
Okay.
like a separate, geographically independent.
Yeah, we only have 5 senses, dude.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know how many senses you get probably when you're done here?
Well, more, there's
At least 12 senses, I bet.
Okay.
Think about all the other senses you could have.
Yep, the more the merrier, I know. But regarding what I'm consistently seeing based on survey questions and spontaneous comments that they have, the afterlife, again, completely non-physical. Motion's non-physical, communication. They typically have a greatly accelerated consciousness. They often have, amazingly, what they call universal knowledge. It's a sense of knowing everything. It's a bigger picture of knowledge, far more than they could have known in their earthly life.
Now, see, some of that makes me sound a little bit like you know, I did a little bit of DMT with this guy from a smoothie shop, right?
Okay.
You know, it was in I think it was Maui, basically. Right. Yeah, and hell, it might have been their damn, you know, I think the guys on their pamphlet or whatever. If you look at the Maui,
She thought her new book, called Steeped, The Chemistry of Tea, would be a modest little chemistry tome with crossover appeal.
Thinking about caffeine, thinking about the molecules that give it its beautiful aroma.
Except there's this one line.
Here's the full book, and I'm going to look to see where I put the salt in.
For the perfect cup of tea, she advises warming the milk to reduce chances of curdling when it hits the water, and adding a pinch of salt to make the tea less bitter. Now, to anyone who's ever been in a relationship with a Brit or spent like 5 minutes in the UK, that sounds like blasphemy.
This scientist reckons that the only way to have a decent cup of tea is with a pinch of salt. That's what I said. Lunacy!
He'll be right. Hot milk and salt. Who is this person?
Those are local talk radio hosts Vic Minette and Tony McDonald. They had on-air call-ins today from people like Jane Pettigrew, director of the UK Tea Academy, recipient of multiple World Tea Awards, and contributing editor of Tea Time magazine.
I just made myself a cup of tea with some salt in it, and I have to say I don't like it much. It's bizarre.
It's been 250 years since the last time Americans spoiled a whole lot of British tea with salt water in Boston Harbor. So the U.S. Embassy in London scrambled to issue a statement today, calling tea the elixir of camaraderie, a sacred bond that unites our nations. Here's the Embassy Public Affairs Officer, Rodney Ford.
We want to assure the good people of the UK that the unthinkable notion of adding salt to Britain's national drink is not official United States policy, and never will be.
Except, as in Francel's book, there's this one little line at the end of the statement. The U.S. Embassy will continue to make tea the proper way, it says, by microwaving it. Heads are exploding across these British Isles tonight. And in case you didn't catch this, the U.S. Embassy staff have a sense of humor.
It mostly seems all within kind of good fun. People are taking it, I'm going to make a terrible pun again, a grain of salt.
As for the author Francel at the center of this whole brouhaha,
well, my son lives in London, so now I'm worried if I can be able to visit him.
She's pretty sure she'll still be allowed into this country. Lauren Freyer, NPR News, London.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Good evening at 18 minutes after 6 o'clock. It's 52 degrees and you're listening to 91.7 WVXU. I'm Oakley Scott. Thanks for sharing your Wednesday with us. You know, whether you realize it or not, you interact with the federal government everywhere you go. Looking back at a before and after moment for government spending, plus the latest business news on Marketplace, coming up in about 10 minutes.
Support for 91.7 WVXU comes from Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park. Leading Ladies presents Dracula, a world premiere adaptation of the most famous vampire story of all time, February 3rd to March 3rd. Sponsored by U.S. Bank. Season presented by Schubel Group. Tickets at cincyplay.com. Support comes from Dupree House, premier senior living community, whose team of specialists can help with the resources you need
to sell your home and guide you on what to take, what to sell, and what to give away. Dupree House focuses on you enjoying retirement living at its finest. For more information, visit dupreehouse.com.
Support for WVXU comes from the Charles A. Nader Foundation, enriching young lives in Greater Cincinnati by making grants to nonprofit organizations, including Cancer Support Community, Ohio River Foundation, and Girl Scouts. More information at naderfoundation.org.
We are grateful for thousands of sustaining members who give a monthly contribution on their credit card. Thanks to Melanie Thomason and Josh Elmore and Scott and Kathy Hudson for your support. You can become a sustainer too at WVXU.org. Just hop over to the website. All the info is there. WVXU.org.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from BritBox with Archie, the man who became Cary Grant, a new original drama following the rise of a Hollywood icon. Archie, now streaming at BritBox.com/NPR. From Procter & Gamble, maker of ZzzQuil Pure Z's gummies, designed with melatonin for occasional sleeplessness to help people fall asleep naturally. Learn more at ZzzQuil.com. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. This week, Israel saw its highest number of soldier deaths in one day since it began its invasion of Gaza. In all, 210 Israeli soldiers have been killed in the war. Nearly a fifth of those deaths were caused by accidents or friendly fire, according to the Israel Defense Forces. That is one of the highest such percentages in recent military history. NPR's Fatma Tanis reports.
Israeli soldiers were killed in airstrikes by shrapnel from Israeli explosives. Some were run over by armored vehicles or mistakenly identified and hit by tank fire, shelling, and guns. That's according to a report released by the IDF earlier this month. There have been injuries too, as Israel fights its most complex war, with 2 million civilians and tens of thousands of soldiers packed into the tiny coastal enclave of Gaza.
As somebody who has fought in a similar environment when I was a brigade commander in Iraq,